No matter how much you love Mr. Pandaria, no matter how much your guild loves Mr. Pandaria, I'd imagine you and them are both ready for something new. It's kind of crazy that in preparation for this video, I started looking back through all the release dates, all the way back to Nax actually. So I started looking at Wrath and seeing how long was we in Nax, Eye of Eternity and Sartharian's Lair before we got Ulduar. Then I started looking at the Cataclysm raids as well, and quite honestly, it's normally around about now. The thing is, Blizzard did say that they kind of want the Mr. Pandaria cadence, how long the expansion goes on for, to be very similar to the original release. Now, they actually said that in multiple interviews in the build-up to Mr. Pandaria when we was asking whether it was going to be an accelerated cadence, are we going to fly through the game, or is it going to, be dragged out? And I was one that was really pleased with the fact that it was going to be its original release. And I feel like now that was actually a completely wrong point of view, or a wrong take, or a take, however you want to put it. The reason I say that is because I think that it's kind of actually crazy that in a classic expansion that's a re-release, we actually get content slower than retail. Now, I'm not going to sit here and start comparing classic to retail because for those of you that watch me stream over on kick.com/Scottejaye, you already know I'm pretty much sinking all of my time into retail, the Midnight Alpha, Legion Remix. So if any of you are actually interested in the retail side of things, it's pretty much where my focus has been for weeks, hence why there's not been that many videos, because I am actually absolutely loving Legion Remix. I mentioned it in the last video that was about 8 years ago, but Rested XP have got a guide for it as well. So if you're just so used to the blue arrow, you want to just go on and follow a blue arrow around, get to level 80, it gets you all of the infinite power. It does basically everything, then there's a link in the description. But basically, it's got to a point in Mr. Pandaria where our guild is so bored of tier 14 content that we've took a break from raiding. We're not raiding in our 10-man, which we normally do on Tuesdays. We're not doing our 25-mans at weekends, just because, honestly, as soon as the raid gets together, everyone's already just talking about, are we finished yet? We want to get out. So we made a conscious decision that rather than just burning people out and them not even making it to Throne of Thunder, just to have a break for a few weeks and kick off when the Throne of Thunder PTR starts. Now, most people are kind of expecting the Throne of Thunder PTR to be very soon. Obviously not this weekend because it's Halloween. It would be kind of mental to limit the amount of participation because a lot of people will have plans over the Halloween weekend. I don't know what sort of plans. I mean, I've got kids and it's too cold to take them out trick-or-treating. So for me, it will probably just be playing WoW. But then that means, could it be the following week? Well, if we think about the original Mist of Pandaria cadence, it was around 5 months from when MSV launched to when Throne of Thunder launched. Now, we're currently only sat around the 3-month mark. MSV launched on the 31st of July. It's not even the end of October yet. So we literally could be looking at a January Throne of Thunder release, which is kind of crazy. And if you're thinking, no way, we're 100% going to be doing something new that's not tier 14 before then, bear with me and just think about how all of these PTRs are handled and how they normally launch. We ordinarily get 2 PTR weekends, and they're never back-to-back. We'll have 1 week of PTR, 1 week off, 1 week of PTR, 1 week off, and then possibly it'll launch that following week, after the week's downtime, after the second round of PTR. So no matter what happens, it's basically going to be a full 4 weeks from the second that we get the PTR announced to when it launches. Now, by the time we get an announcement, the bare minimum you would imagine when we get a PTR announcement is going to be November, so next month, because we're at the end of October now already. And are they really going to release a new raid in December over the Christmas period, or are they just going to hold off and release it in January? For me, as far away as January seems, it's kind of not actually the worst thing in the world if you enjoy other versions of the game, because Legion Remix is a limited time event. So for us, like as in our guild, I can only speak for us personally, not for everybody obviously, but a lot of us are enjoying Legion Remix. So actually having the break from raids at the moment and being able to focus on something that's only going to be here for a couple more months, actually it's kind of good for us. But it's not good for everyone, because if Mr. Pandaria is your main game and it's the only game that you enjoy playing, man, tier 14 is an absolute slog. And honestly, I don't even think the one raid that no one wants to do is the worst one. Like MSV. MSV is the one that I enjoy. I could do MSV every week, all the way through Mr. Pandaria, because it's at least a fun raid. But if I never see Heart of Fear or Terrace of Endless Springs again, I'd be a happy man. So actually the thought of tier 14 being current content for at least another 8 weeks is kind of crazy, and it will bleed numbers, as in we're already seeing a drop off. You've only got to look at Ironforge.pro. You can see that pretty much every couple of weeks there's a decent drop-off in the amount of people that are actively raiding, but then you'll see it pick up in other areas. So it's not necessarily losing subscribers, but certainly losing active players on MoP. And I would hate to think what that's going to look like after the Christmas period if that is going to be when we get Throne of Thunder. Now, what I'm actually hoping is I'm completely wrong, and they do an announcement for the PTR maybe next week or the week after, and we do get a December Throne of Thunder launch. But I know that won't suit everyone because people have Christmas holidays, kids are off school. It's not really the ideal time to be sitting down and progging through a lot of bosses, because you've got to remember, there are a lot of bosses in Throne of Thunder. So in terms of being sensible, launching new content, it would make sense to come after Christmas, after New Year. But in terms of actually pleasing the people that are playing the game and paying for the game, and their only game is Mr. Pandaria, I kind of feel like we're getting to that point now where we do need something else. Now, I'm sure there's going to be many of you in the comments saying you're fine with it being after the new year because you're still progressing through tier 14, and that's absolutely fine. There'll be guilds that haven't cleared tier 14 by the time Throne of Thunder launches, whether they launch it now or they launch it in 6 months' time. That's both normal and acceptable. There's absolutely no problem in getting some gear from Throne of Thunder and then going back and clearing some bosses that you missed. Classic, in my opinion, is not a place where they have to hold out and wait for the content to be cleared by the vast majority before they move on. Let's face it, retail don't even do that. Retail don't look and go, oh no, only 10% have cleared the raids, we'll hold off on the next phase. No, they send it. If you want to clear those raids to get the achievements and that, then you go back and you do it during the next phase. So I definitely don't think Blizzard should be holding off just because of possibly low completion rates. I think what they should actually be doing is looking at the fact that the numbers are dropping, and they're only going to continue to drop until Throne of Thunder launches. Everyone knows Throne of Thunder onwards is kind of the better raids. I've said all along that phase 1 is the worst phase of Mr. Pandaria. I've said it in so many videos. I said it before MoP Classic launched, and I knew it would be a bit of a slog. But once we then get into Throne of Thunder, Siege of Orgrimmar, like, the raids are just much more fun. You're not flying all over the place to 3 different raids. You've not got just ridiculous amounts of gimmick bosses, but don't get me wrong, there are a few. The raids are just much better designed, a lot more fun, and even the loot and the tier set bonuses, everything is so much better. Now, when it comes to the actual content that we're going to get outside of the raids when we get Throne of Thunder and when we get Siege of Orgrimmar, this is where I'm kind of really hoping for Blizzard to communicate with us on what their plans are. Because there are a lot of things to do. Of course, we're going to get world bosses, being Nalakan and Dasta. We're going to get higher gear from reps. We're going to get Isle of Thunder, where you can do loads of dailies. You can do a treasure trove room to get bonus rolls, but for the older content. We're going to get more Celestials, which I can't wait for. The legendary quest line is going to continue, where we can get a legendary meta gem, which is actually like super impactful to your DPS, your healing, your tanking ability, all of that. Warlocks will be excited because they can get the green Fell Fire Warlock quest item, and overall the content outside of the raid is going to be very good. But like I said in the last video, with no clarity around what's actually going to happen at the end of MoP, there's a lot of stuff where it requires a lot of time investment. You know, where if you're wanting to get all the achievements, you're wanting to get all the collectibles, mounts, toys, reputations, you kind of need to know that if you're going to do all of that, you know, where's it going to go? Because I do feel like all roads on Classic at the moment are leading to one of two places. We know for a fact that they're working on some form of Classic Plus, so they're going to want to try and get as many people into that as possible. And then we know the only real other option would be retail. I genuinely don't think there's going to be anything after MoP. I don't think there's going to be anything after even TBC Anniversary, where it would be mad not to do Wrath of the Lich King. I've said that before, but I kind of feel like they're going to be getting to a point now where if they're going to be going all in on Classic Plus, they're going to have to go all in on Classic Plus. Because just look at Season of Discovery. When they was trying to balance Season of Discovery and Cataclysm, one of them at any given point was suffering. Cataclysm, the beta, and the lead up to launch suffered because of Season of Discovery. Later phases of Season of Discovery suffered because they was then working on Cataclysm. So I think with Classic Plus being such a big gamble, they would need to basically just put everything into that outside of obviously retail. You'll have the Classic team working on one version of the game, and then you have the retail team working on one version of the game. And that's just how I see it going, which is kind of why I don't see much light at the end of MoP, to the point where I don't even think these characters will move to retail. That is something I hope I'm wrong on, because obviously I've sunk loads of time into Classic. I'd love to move my EU characters even from Classic to retail, and my NA characters have actually done far more. So those ones I definitely don't want to lose. But in all seriousness, I just don't think they will. I actually think at the end of MoP, they'll just be MoP era realms. And God, I hope I'm wrong. So yeah, this was just a bit of a whingy, whiny, why ain't we got Throne of Thunder video? But, you know, I'm sure we're all feeling the same way. But yes, let's hope we get some news from Blizzard soon on at least when Throne of Thunder PTR is going to be out. Let me know in the comments when you think it's going to launch, but I do honestly see it being January. But we'll wait and see. I'll see you on the next one.